The Great Hall of the Galactic Tribunal was older than human civilization itself. Its walls were made of living crystal that had grown for 10,000 years. Light from a dying star filtered through the ceiling and painted everything in shades of gold and red. Representatives from 12 of the most powerful species in the galaxy sat in a perfect circle. They had gathered to judge a small blue planet called Earth. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone in the center of the circle. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. Around her sat beings that could live for thousands of years. Beings that had mastered the secrets of faster-than-light travel when humans still lived in caves. She showed no fear. "High Arbiter," Keth Voren rose from his seat. He was a crystalline being, nearly 3 meters tall. His body was made of something like living glass, and light passed through him in strange patterns. He had judged disputes between civilizations for over 4,000 years. His voice echoed through the hall like wind through a canyon. "The Valorian Dominion has brought serious charges against the species known as humanity," he said. "They claim that Earth is harboring refugees who fled Valorian space illegally. They claim this is a violation of galactic law. How does Earth respond?" Elena looked up at the High Arbiter without blinking. "Earth confirms that we have given shelter to 47,000 Valorian citizens. They came to us asking for protection. We gave it to them." Sound like thunder rolled through the chamber. It came from the Valorian representative, a massive reptilian creature covered in dark red scales. His name was Lord Krathos, and he was the voice of the Valorian Emperor himself. "Hey, these are not citizens," Lord Krathos growled. "They are criminals. Genetic defectives who refuse to submit to purification. They belong to the Dominion. Earth has stolen our property." Lena turned to face him. Her voice remained steady. "They are people. They came to us because your empire wanted to kill them for being born different. We do not return people to their deaths." The chamber erupted in whispers. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Everyone knew about the Valorian purification laws. Everyone knew what happened to those who did not meet their genetic standards. But no one had ever dared to challenge the Dominion so directly. "Hi." Arbiter Keth Voren raised a crystalline hand, and silence fell instantly. "The tribunal has reviewed the evidence. Earth did indeed accept these refugees, knowing that Valoria would object. This is a clear violation of Confederacy protocols regarding internal species matters." Elena opened her mouth to speak, but the High Arbiter continued.
However,
"We also recognize that this is a complex situation. The tribunal does not wish to see conflict. Therefore, we offer Earth a choice." He paused, and the light inside his body flickered like a heartbeat. "Earth will surrender the refugees to Valorian custody within 7 galactic cycles. If Earth complies, this matter will be closed. If Earth refuses, the Confederacy will not prevent the Valorian Dominion from taking corrective action." The words hung in the air like poison. Everyone in the chamber knew what corrective action meant. The Valorian Crimson Fleet had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than humanity. Earth had only 12 patrol ships and a few orbital defense platforms. They would last perhaps an hour against a full Valorian assault. Lord Krathos made a sound that might have been laughter. 7 cycles is generous. I would have given them 7 hours. Elena looked around the chamber slowly. She looked at each representative in turn. Some looked away in shame. Others met her gaze with cold indifference. A few seemed almost sorry, but none of them spoke in her defense. "I understand," Elena said finally. "I will relay the tribunal's decision to Earth." She bowed slightly to the High Arbiter and turned to leave. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Just before she reached the great doors, Lord Krathos called out, "Ambassador, I hope your people are wise enough to see reason. The Crimson Fleet has never known defeat. 500 warships, each one capable of burning your cities to glass. Do not make this harder than it needs to be." Elena stopped, but did not turn around. "I will deliver your message, Lord Krathos." Then she walked through the doors, and they closed behind her with a sound like a tomb. Sealing shut. The moment she was alone in the corridor, Elena pulled out a small device from her pocket. It looked like nothing special, but it contained the most advanced encryption technology humanity had ever created. She typed a short message and sent it to a location that existed on no map. The message contained only 4 words: "Wake the sleeping giant." On Earth. It was night over the Pacific Ocean, 10 kilometers beneath the waves, in a facility that had been built in absolute secrecy over the course of 80 years. A console that had been dark for 150 years suddenly came to life. Admiral Marcus Chen was an old man now. He had been young when they first assigned him to Project Prometheus. He had spent his entire career preparing for a day he hoped would never come. Now that day was here. He read the message 3 times. Then he closed his eyes and let out a long breath. "God help us all," he whispered. "It is time." He picked up a phone and spoke a single code word. Within minutes, the facility around him began to wake up. Lights flickered on in sections that had been dark for decades. Computers that had been sleeping began to run. Men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment reported to their stations in the main command center. A massive screen showed a map of the solar system. But it was not the map that the galaxy knew. This map showed things that no alien sensor had ever detected. Hidden shipyards inside hollowed-out asteroids. Secret facilities beneath the ice of Europa. Construction bays hidden in the permanent shadow of Mercury where the sun never reached. And at the center of it all, 12 massive signatures that made everything else look tiny by comparison. Admiral Chen stood before the screen and looked at what humanity had built in secret over 200 years. The galaxy thought they knew everything about Earth. They had cataloged every human ship. They had laughed at the primitive patrol vessels and the modest defense platforms. They had judged humanity as weak and helpless. They were wrong. A young officer approached the admiral. Her name was Lieutenant Park, and she had been born in this facility. She had never seen the sun with her own eyes. Her entire life had been dedicated to this moment. "All stations report ready. The fleet is awaiting your orders." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. He thought about the 47,000 refugees who had come to Earth seeking protection. He thought about the promise humanity had made to them. He thought about what the galaxy would say when they learned the truth. "Begin the awakening sequence," he said, "and send a message to Ambassador Vasquez. Tell her that the giant is stirring, 10,000 kilometers away, in the cold darkness beyond Neptune's orbit." Something impossibly large began to move for the first time in over a century. It made no sound. It produced no heat. It was invisible to every sensor the galaxy had ever invented. But it was there, and it was just the beginning. The galaxy had given Earth 7 cycles to surrender. They expected fear. They expected panic. They expected a small blue planet to bow before the might of the Crimson Fleet. Like so many others had before, they had no idea what was coming. In her quarters, aboard the diplomatic station, Ambassador Elena Vasquez received Admiral Chen's reply. She read it, and for the first time that day, she allowed herself to smile. The sleeping giant was waking up, and the galaxy would never be the same again. News traveled fast in the galaxy. Within hours of the tribunal's decision, every civilization from the core worlds to the outer rim knew about Earth's fate. The story was simple, and everyone agreed on the ending. A small planet had defied the mighty Valorian dominion. Now that planet would burn on Nexus Prime. It's the greatest trading hub in the known galaxy. The betting houses opened new markets. What were the odds that Earth would survive? 10,000 to 1 against. What were the odds that humanity would surrender the refugees? 3-2-1 in favor. What were the odds that a single human ship would survive the first hour of battle? No one would even take that bet. The Valorian Dominion did not wait. 3 days after the tribunal's ruling, the Crimson Fleet began its departure. 500 warships gathered above the Valorian homeworld in a formation that blocked out the stars. Each ship was at least 1 kilometer long. Each one carried enough weapons to turn a continent into glass. They had conquered 17 worlds and had never lost a single battle. Lord Krathos stood on the bridge of the flagship. It's a massive dreadnought called the Fury of Empire. He watched his fleet assemble with pride swelling in his chest. This would not be a war. This would be an execution. "Set course for the Sol system," he commanded. "We will arrive in 12 cycles. I want the humans to have time to think about what is coming. The fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel and vanished from Valorian space. Across the galaxy, people raised glasses to toast the end of humanity's brief and unimportant history. But something strange began happening almost immediately. The first report came from a merchant convoy traveling through the Kepler expanse. Captain Yethra of the trading vessel Silver Current was an experienced pilot. She had traveled between stars for over 200 years. She had never seen anything like what happened that night. Her navigation systems went dark without warning. Every screen on her bridge flickered and died. For exactly 3.7 seconds, her ship was completely blind. When the power returned, her sensors showed something impossible. There was a gravitational anomaly nearby. Something with the mass of a small moon was sitting in empty space where nothing should exist. Then it was gone. Just like that. No engine signature. No jump flash. It simply was not there anymore. Captain Yethra filed a report with the Merchant Guild. She expected them to laugh at her. Instead, she learned that 14 other ships had reported the same thing in the past 2 days. All of them near the route the Crimson Fleet was taking toward Earth. The second incident was more disturbing. A Valorian scout ship called the Swift Blade was patrolling ahead of the main fleet. Its mission was to watch for any signs of human resistance. It was a fast ship, with a crew of 30 and the best sensors the Dominion could build. It vanished. Rescue ships found the Swift Blade drifting in empty space 6 hours later. The hull was completely intact. There was no damage of any kind. But every system on the ship was powered down, and the entire crew was unconscious. They woke up confused but unharmed. None of them remembered what had happened. The ship's computer had recorded one final image before shutting down. It showed the sensor display in the moment before everything went dark. Something had passed over the Swift Blade, something so large that it blocked out the stars behind it. The computer could not identify what it was. The computer could not even guess how big it was because it exceeded all known parameters. Lord, Krathos reviewed the report in his private quarters. He told himself it was a malfunction. He told himself there was nothing in the galaxy that could threaten the Crimson Fleet. But for the first time in his long career, he felt something cold moving in his stomach. On Earth. Admiral Chen watched everything from the Pacific Command Center. Hundreds of screens showed him data from across the solar system and beyond. He allowed himself a small smile when he read the report about the Swift Blade. The Whisper Protocol is working perfectly, said Lieutenant Park. They are starting to feel afraid. Admiral Chen nodded. Fear is not our goal. Understanding is. We want them to question everything they think they know. For 2 centuries, humanity had developed technology in absolute secrecy. Other species had focused on making their ships faster and their weapons more powerful. Humanity had asked a different question. What if a ship could be invisible, not just to sensors, but to physics itself? What if something could move through space without leaving any trace at all? The answer was the Whisper Protocol. It was not a single technology, but a collection of breakthroughs that worked together. Ships using the protocol did not hide from detection. They simply did not exist as far as the universe was concerned. No heat, no radiation, no gravitational signature, nothing. And humanity had been using this technology to follow the Crimson Fleet since the moment it left Valorian space, in another part of the command center. Ambassador Vasquez was meeting with the Valorian refugees, 47,000 men, women, and children who had fled their homeland because they were born different. The Valorian genetic purity laws declared them defective. Their own government had sentenced them to death simply for existing. Earth had taken them in. Earth had promised to protect them. Now that promise was being tested. Their leader was an elderly woman named Cirith. Her scales were a pale blue color instead of the dark red that Valorians considered proper. This small difference had made her a criminal in the eyes of her own people. She had led her followers across the galaxy to find a place where they could simply live. Ambassador Cirith said, "We have heard about the Crimson Fleet. We know they are coming because of us. If our surrender would save your people, we are prepared to give ourselves up." Lena took the old woman's hands in her own. They were cold and trembling slightly. "Cirith, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Earth did not take you in because it was easy. We took you in because it was right. We made a promise to protect you, and we intend to keep that promise." Cirith's eyes filled with tears. "But the Crimson Fleet has never been defeated. Your ships are so few and so small. How can you possibly stand against them?" Alina smiled. It was the same smile she had worn when she received Admiral Chen's message. "The galaxy thinks they know what Earth is capable of. They are wrong. They have been wrong for a very long time." She could not tell Cirith the truth. But soon the whole galaxy would know. Far from Earth, the Crimson Fleet continued its journey. But the strange incidents did not stop. Crew members reported hearing things in the silence between stars. Faint sounds that might have been music. Old songs in a language none of them recognized. Human songs from centuries past, playing on frequencies that should have been empty. Navigation officers reported seeing shadows on their screens. Contacts that appeared for a fraction of a second and then vanished. Always at the edge of sensor range. Always too fast to identify. Lord Krathos ordered extra patrols. He doubled the watch on every ship. He told his commanders that these were tricks, nothing more. Human propaganda designed to frighten them, but deep down, he was beginning to wonder. The humans should have been panicking. They should have been begging for mercy. Instead, they were silent. And in that silence, something was watching. Something was waiting. The Crimson Fleet was 6 cycles away from Earth when Lord Krathos received a message directly from the Galactic Confederacy. The High Arbiter himself was requesting an emergency session. There were reports coming in from across the galaxy. Strange sightings. Impossible readings. Whispers of something vast moving through the darkness. For the first time, the galaxy was beginning to ask a question that should have been asked long ago. What was humanity hiding? And why were they not afraid? The Galactic Confederacy had not called an emergency session in over 300 years. The last time had been during the Silicon Mind Uprising, when an entire species of artificial beings had threatened to consume the galaxy. Now the Great Hall was filled once again with representatives from the 12 most powerful civilizations in known space. High Arbiter Kethforin stood at the center of the chamber. The light inside his crystalline body pulsed with agitation. Reports were flooding in from every corner of the galaxy, and none of them made any sense. In the past 6 cycles, he announced, we have received over 200 reports of unexplained phenomena. Sensor ghosts. Navigation failures. Ships losing power for brief moments. All of these incidents share one thing in common. They are occurring along the path of the Crimson Fleet. Lord Krathos rose from his seat. His scales had lost some of their shine. He had not slept well since the journey began. These are tricks. Human deception. They are trying to frighten us with shadows and whispers. It means nothing. A representative from the Merchant Guild stood up. She was a tall insectoid creature with compound eyes that saw in 12 different spectrums. With respect, Lord Krathos, our sensors do not lie. Something is out there. Something our technology cannot identify or track. Something very large. Impossible, Lord Krathos snapped. We have cataloged every human vessel. 12 patrol ships. 3 diplomatic cruisers. A handful of orbital platforms. They have nothing that could threaten the Crimson Fleet. And yet the Merchant Guild representative replied, 17 of our cargo vessels have reported contact with an object massing more than a small moon. An object that appears and disappears without any engine signature. An object that our best scientists cannot explain. The chamber erupted in arguments. Representatives shouted at each other. Some demanded that the Crimson Fleet turn back. Others insisted that showing weakness would only encourage human defiance. The noise grew louder and louder until High Arbiter Kethforin raised his hand. Silence fell immediately. We have requested that Ambassador Vasquez join us, the High Arbiter said. Perhaps humanity can explain what is happening. The great doors opened, and Alina Vasquez walked into the chamber. She moved with the same calm confidence she had shown during her first appearance. If anything, she seemed more relaxed than before. She took her place in the center of the circle and waited. Ambassador, High Arbiter, Kethvorin said. The Confederacy demands an explanation. What is happening to our ships? What are the humans hiding? Alina looked around the chamber slowly. She met the eyes of every representative in turn. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. For 300 years, humanity has been part of this confederacy. In that time, you have treated us as children. You have laughed at our ships. You have mocked our technology. You have called us a developing species worthy of protection, but not respect. She paused and let the words sink in. We did not argue. We did not complain. We simply watched and waited. We wanted to see what kind of galaxy we had joined. We wanted to know if the other species were worthy of trust. Oh, Lord. Krathos slammed his fist against his seat. Enough of this. Answer the question. What are you hiding? Alina turned to face him directly. Lord Krathos, you asked me once if humanity understood what was coming. You told me about your 500 warships. You told me each one could burn our cities to glass. Do you remember what I said? The Valorian shifted uncomfortably. You said you would deliver my message. I did deliver it, Alina said. And now I have a message for you. For all of you. She pulled out a small device and pressed a button. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed two images side by side. On the left was the Fury of Empire, Lord Krathos's flagship. It was the largest and most powerful warship in the Valorian fleet. The image showed its specifications clearly. Length of 1.2 kilometers. Crew of 8,000. Weapons capable of destroying continents. On the right was a silhouette. It was completely black, showing no details at all. Below it was a single line of text that read Uns Prometheus and another line that read Classification Denied. At first, no one understood what they were seeing. The scale seemed wrong. The silhouette was so much larger than the Valorian flagship that it looked like a mistake. Then the numbers appeared. Length of 47 kilometers. Crew unknown. Weapons unknown. Everything else unknown. The chamber went completely silent. Not the silence of respect or attention. This was the silence of beings whose entire understanding of the universe had just collapsed. Hi. Arbiter Kethvorin spoke first. His voice was barely a whisper. This cannot be accurate. It is accurate, Alina said. The Prometheus is one of 12 vessels of similar size. They have been operational for over 150 years. They have been watching the galaxy since before most of you knew humanity existed. Lord Krathos stared at the display. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The flagship that had been his pride for 3 centuries suddenly looked like a toy. A child's plaything compared to what the humans had built. You are lying, he finally managed to say. This is a trick. If you had such vessels, our sensors would have detected them, Alina smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not a kind one either. Your sensors did detect them, Lord Krathos. Every strange reading your fleet has reported, every shadow on your screens, every moment of lost power. That was the Prometheus and her sister ships. They have been following you since you left Valorian space. She pressed another button, and the display changed. Now it showed a map of the galaxy with the Crimson Fleet's route marked in red. Alongside that route, in perfect formation, were 12 blue signatures. Right now, at this very moment, your 500 warships are completely surrounded. They have been surrounded for 6 cycles. They never knew. The Merchant Guild representative made a sound like choking. How is this possible? We have the most advanced sensors in the galaxy. Nothing can hide from us. Nothing you have ever encountered, Alina agreed. But you have never encountered humanity. Not really. You have encountered the mask we chose to wear. The 12 patrol ships and the modest defense platforms. The image of a small and harmless species just trying to survive. She turned to address the entire chamber. That was never who we were. We built our true fleet in the spaces between stars. In hollowed asteroids and frozen moons, in the shadows where no one thought to look. We developed technology that does not hide from your sensors, but exists outside their ability to detect entirely. High Arbiter Kethforin stepped forward. The light in his body was flickering rapidly. Why? Why would you hide such power? Why pretend to be weak? Elena's expression softened slightly. Because we were waiting. Watching. Hoping that the galaxy might grow beyond conquest and domination. Hoping that we would never need to reveal what we had built. We wanted to believe that civilizations could learn to protect each other instead of destroying each other. She looked directly at Lord Kratos. You proved us wrong. When 47,000 innocent people came to us begging for protection, the galaxy's response was to threaten us with annihilation. Not because we had attacked anyone. Not because we had broken any real law. Simply because we refused to hand over helpless refugees to be killed. The chamber remained frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. So now you know, Elena continued. Earth is not a weak little planet waiting to be conquered. Earth has been the silent guardian of this region of space for 2 centuries, and the Crimson Fleet is not hunting us. The Crimson Fleet has been walking into a trap since the moment it left home. She turned off the display and put the device back in her pocket. The question now is simple. What happens next is entirely up to you. We do not want war. We have never wanted war, but if war comes, it will not be the war you expected. Far away aboard the Fury of Empire, Lord Kratos received the transmission at the same moment as everyone else in the galaxy. He watched the display showing the impossible size of the human vessel. He watched his fleet's position surrounded by blue signatures that his sensors still could not detect. Then he heard a voice on a channel that should not exist. A human voice, calm and professional. Crimson Fleet, this is the Uns Prometheus. You are being escorted. Please do not deviate from your current course. We would like to talk. Lord Kratos looked out the viewport into the darkness of space. For the first time in his life, he understood what it felt like to be prey. And somewhere in that darkness, the giant was finally opening its eyes. Lord Kratos stood frozen on the bridge of the Fury of Empire. The human voice still echoed in his ears. Around him, his crew stared at their screens in confusion and growing terror. The sensors showed nothing. Empty space in every direction. But the transmission had come from somewhere close. Very close. Show yourselves. Lord Kratos growled into the communication channel. If you are truly out there, prove it. Show me what humanity has built. There was a pause. Then the human voice returned. It sounded almost sad, as you wish. What happened next would be remembered for 1,000 years. It would be taught in schools across the galaxy. It would change the way every civilization thought about power and those who hid it. 300 kilometers off the starboard side of the Fury of Empire, space itself seemed to tear open. There was no flash of light. No burst of energy. One moment there was nothing but empty darkness. The next moment there was something so vast that Lord Kratos could not comprehend what he was seeing. The Uns Prometheus did not appear. It simply became real. Like a mountain rising from the ocean. Like a moon stepping out of shadow. 47 kilometers of midnight black hole stretched across the viewport. It was so large that Lord Kratos could not see where it began or where it ended. His flagship, the pride of the Valorian Dominion, looked like an insect floating next to a whale. The bridge crew began to scream. Silence, Lord Kratos commanded. His voice cracked, but he forced himself to stand straight, maintain discipline. But even as he spoke, more shapes were appearing in the darkness. Behind the Prometheus, another massive shadow resolved into existence. Then another. Then another. The Uns Athena. The UN's Valkyrie. The UNSS Quetzalcoatl. The UNSS Amaterasu. Names from human mythology. Gods and heroes from Earth's ancient past. 12 supercarriers in total. Each one 40 kilometers or more in length. Each one carrying technology that Valorian scientists could not even begin to understand. They hung in space like sleeping giants who had finally opened their eyes. But that was not all. Between the supercarriers, smaller vessels began appearing. Lord Kratos almost laughed at the word smaller. These ships were still larger than anything in the Crimson Fleet. Battle cruisers and destroyers and carriers. Hundreds of them. an entire armada that had been invisible until this moment. The Crimson Fleet's 500 warships were completely surrounded. They floated in the center of a sphere of human vessels like prey caught in a net. Every weapon in the human fleet was pointed at them. Every sensor was locked on. If the humans chose to fire, the battle would last less than a minute. Across the galaxy, trillions of beings watched the scene unfold. The transmission was being broadcast on every channel. Every screen on every world showed the same impossible image. The mighty Crimson Fleet, terror of the galaxy, floating helplessly in the middle of humanity's true power. On Nexus Prime, the betting houses did not just close. They collapsed entirely. The odds had been 10,000 to 1 against Earth. Now there were no odds at all. The game had changed completely. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Confederacy, the representatives sat in stunned silence. High Arbiter Kethvorin had stopped moving entirely. The light inside his crystalline body had gone dim. He had lived for 4,000 years and had never seen anything like this. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood among them. Watching the same broadcast, her face showed no triumph, or pride, only a deep and weary sadness. This was not a victory. This was the end of a dream. The dream that humanity could stay hidden. The dream that the galaxy would grow up on its own. On the bridge of the fury of empire, Lord Krathos finally found his voice. "Why?" he asked through the communication channel. "Why did you hide? With this power, you could have ruled the galaxy. You could have made every species bow before you." The response came not from the Prometheus, but from Earth itself. A new face appeared on every screen in the galaxy. An old human man with tired eyes and a calm expression. He wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of centuries. "I am Admiral Marcus Chen of the United Nations Space Navy. I speak for Earth and for all of humanity." He paused and looked directly into the camera. It felt like he was looking at every being in the galaxy at the same time. For 200 years, humanity has maintained the illusion of weakness. We built our fleet in secret. We hid our technology from the galaxy. We pretended to be a small and helpless species that needed protection. Images began appearing beside him. Construction yards inside asteroids. Factories beneath frozen moons. Shipyards hidden in the darkness between stars. The scale of humanity's deception became clear. This was not a project of decades. This was the work of generations. "We did this not out of fear," Admiral Chen continued. "We did this out of hope. Hope that the galaxy might grow beyond conquest and domination. Hope that civilizations might learn to protect the weak instead of preying upon them. Hope that we would never need to reveal what we had built." His expression hardened slightly. 300 years ago, when humanity first reached the stars, we found a galaxy ruled by power. The strong took from the weak. The powerful destroyed those who could not fight back. We saw species wiped out simply for being in the way. We saw refugees turned away to die because helping them was inconvenient. He shook his head slowly. He could not change what the galaxy was. But we could prepare for what it might become. So we built. In silence, in shadow, we created a force that could protect those who could not protect themselves. And we waited to see if we would ever need to use it. The images changed again. Now they showed the Valorian refugees on Earth. 47,000 men. Women and children living in peace, learning, working, building new lives. The pale blue scales that had marked them for death on their homeworld were displayed proudly in the sunlight of a world that had accepted them. When these people came to us, they were running from death. Their own government had sentenced them to extermination for the crime of being born different. The galaxy's response was to demand that we hand them over. The response was to send 500 warships to burn our world if we refused. Admiral Chen leaned forward. "So now you know the truth. Earth is not helpless. Earth has never been helpless. We are the guardians in the dark. We are the protectors of those who have no one else. And we will not surrender a single life to satisfy the cruelty of empires." He straightened, and his voice softened. "But understand this. We do not want war. We have never wanted war. These ships were built to protect, not to conquer. Every weapon you see was created in hope that it would never be fired. We reveal ourselves today not as a threat, but as a choice." He spread his hands. "The galaxy can continue as it has always been. The strong can prey upon the weak. Empires can rise and fall on mountains of corpses. And humanity will be watching, waiting, ready to act when innocent lives are threatened." His eyes seemed to burn with quiet intensity, or the galaxy can choose a different path. Cooperation instead of conquest. Protection instead of predation. A future where species lift each other up instead of tearing each other down. He looked directly at the camera once more. "The choice is yours. All of yours. We have shown you what we are capable of. Now show us what you are capable of becoming." The transmission ended in the silence that followed. Lord Krathos looked out at the impossible fleet surrounding his ships. He thought about his career, the 17 worlds he had conquered, the civilizations he had crushed. He had always believed that power was the only truth in the universe, that the strong had the right to take whatever they wanted. Now he floated in the grip of a power so vast that his entire life seemed meaningless. The humans could destroy him with a thought. They could wipe out the Crimson Fleet, and there was nothing he could do to stop them. But they were not attacking. They were waiting. They were giving him a choice. A message arrived from the Prometheus. It was an invitation. Admiral Chen was asking Lord Krathos to come aboard. To talk. To see for himself what humanity had built and why. Lord Krathos stared at the message for a long time. His hands were shaking. Everything he believed had been shattered in a single moment. But somewhere deep inside him, something new was stirring. Something that felt almost like hope. "Prepare my shuttle," he said quietly. "I am going to meet the humans." The galaxy held its breath and waited to see what would happen next. The shuttle carrying Lord Krathos crossed the distance between the fury of Empire and the Prometheus in complete silence. No one on his crew had spoken a word since he announced his decision. They watched him go with eyes full of confusion and fear. Their commander was flying into the heart of the enemy, an enemy so powerful that resistance was meaningless. As the shuttle approached the Prometheus, Lord Krathos pressed his face against the viewport like a child, seeing the stars for the first time. The hull of the human vessel stretched endlessly in every direction. It was not just large. It was a world unto itself. He could see structures on its surface that looked like cities, landing bays that could swallow his flagship whole, weapon arrays that his sensors could not even identify. And yet there was something beautiful about it. The design was elegant, graceful. This was not a machine built for destruction. This was something else entirely. The shuttle landed in a bay filled with soft light. When the doors opened, Lord Krathos stepped out and found Admiral Chen waiting for him. The human was smaller than he expected, old and fragile looking. But his eyes held a depth that made Lord Krathos uncomfortable. Those eyes had seen things, known things, decided things that changed the fate of worlds. "Welcome aboard the Prometheus," Admiral Chen said. "I am glad you accepted my invitation." Lord Krathos looked around the landing bay. Human crew members moved about their duties. They glanced at him with curiosity but not fear, not hatred. They looked at him the way someone might look at a guest who had arrived for dinner. "Why?" Lord Krathos asked. It was the same question he had asked before, but now it carried different weight. "You could destroy us. You could destroy the entire Confederacy. Why are you talking instead of shooting?" Admiral Chen smiled sadly. "Come with me. There is something I want to show you." They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Lord Krathos saw things he could not explain. Technology that made Valorian science look primitive. Gardens filled with plants from 100 different worlds. And everywhere he looked, he saw people. Humans, of course. But also others. Species he did not recognize. Species that should not exist. They stopped before a great window that looked out into a massive chamber. Inside the chamber was something that took Lord Krathos's breath away. It was a city. a living, breathing city inside the ship. Buildings rose toward an artificial sky. Rivers flowed through parks filled with trees, and walking through the streets were thousands of beings from dozens of different species. "What is this?" Lord Krathos whispered. "This is the sanctuary," Admiral Chen replied. 200 years ago, when we first began building the Prometheus, we gave it a purpose. Not just to fight, but to preserve, to protect, to save what the galaxy was destroying. He pointed to a group of tall, willowy beings with silver skin walking through a garden. The Selenari. The Confederacy believes they went extinct 3 centuries ago when their sun exploded. 80,000 of them live here now. We evacuated them in secret before the end. Pointed to another group. Small creatures covered in soft fur, playing in a fountain. The Kindri. The Valorian Dominion wiped out their homeworld 60 years ago because they refused to submit. We saved 12,000 of them. They have children now, grandchildren. Lord Krathos felt something breaking inside his chest. His people had destroyed the Kindari. He remembered the celebration when the news arrived. Another enemy crushed, another world conquered. He had raised a glass and cheered. Now those same people were alive, living in peace inside a human ship, protected by the very species the galaxy had dismissed as weak and unimportant. 17 species, Admiral Chen continued. 17 civilizations that the galaxy gave up for dead. They live here. In the Prometheus and her sister ships, we could not save everyone. We could not stop every war, but we saved who we could. We preserved what we could. He turned to face Lord Krathos directly. This is what humanity built in the darkness. Not just weapons. Not just warships. We built arcs, sanctuaries, places where the lost and the forgotten could survive. Because someone had to remember. Someone had to care. Lord Krathos could not speak. His throat had closed up. Emotions he had not felt in centuries were flooding through him. Shame, grief, and something else. Something that felt like the first light of dawn after an endless night. Admiral Chen led him to another room. This one was smaller and darker. In the center stood a pedestal, and on the pedestal was an object that hummed with ancient power. It looked like a crystal, but it was clearly something more. Something older than any civilization Lord Krathos had ever encountered. "We found this 200 years ago," Admiral Chen explained. "Drifting in the void between galaxies. It is a warning beacon. Left by a species that transcended physical form millions of years before Earth even existed." The crystal began to glow, and images appeared in the air. Civilizations rising and falling. Empires conquering and being conquered. War after war after war. An endless cycle of destruction that repeated itself across millions of years. "The message is simple," Admiral Chen said. "Civilizations destroy themselves. They rise and they fall and they take everything with them. The cycle has repeated countless times. Each time the galaxy burns. Each time, almost everything is lost." Lord Krathos watched the images with growing horror. He saw echoes of his own civilization in those ancient wars. The same pride, the same cruelty, the same belief that power was the only thing that mattered. "We built our fleet to break the cycle," Admiral Chen said. "Not through conquest. Not through domination, but by being ready, by watching, by protecting those who could not protect themselves, by showing the galaxy that there is another way." He placed his hand on Lord Krathos' shoulder. It was a gentle touch. The touch of a friend. You came here expecting to find an enemy, a threat, a power that wanted to destroy you. Instead, you found this, a ship full of refugees and survivors, a fleet built on hope instead of hate, a species that chose to hide its strength rather than use it for conquest. Lord Krathos looked at the old human with new eyes. He saw the weight that Admiral Chen carried, the burden of knowing what the galaxy could become, the pain of watching civilizations destroy themselves while holding back the power to stop them.
Oh.
"Why did you not intervene before?" Lord Krathos asked. "You could have stopped so many wars, saved so many lives." Because we wanted you to choose, Admiral Chen replied. We wanted the galaxy to grow up on its own, to learn that cooperation is better than conquest, that protecting the weak makes everyone stronger. We hoped that if we waited long enough, you would figure it out yourselves. He sighed heavily. When you threatened to destroy Earth for protecting refugees, we knew we could not wait any longer. The cycle was beginning again. And this time, we decided to give the galaxy a choice. A real choice. With full knowledge of what we are and what we can do, Lord Krathos stood in silence for a long time. His whole life had been built on lies. Lies about strength and weakness. Lies about what it meant to be powerful. Lies about what civilizations could become. What do you want from us? He finally asked. Admiral Chen smiled. We want you to go home. Tell your emperor what you have seen. Tell the Confederacy. Tell everyone. And then we want you to choose. Continue the cycle of destruction, or help us build something better. 3 months later, the Treaty of New Horizons was signed in the Great Hall of the Galactic Confederacy. Every major civilization sent representatives. Lord Krathos stood beside Ambassador Vasquez as the document was sealed. He had returned to Valoria, a changed being. His report to the Emperor had shaken the Dominion to its core. Now they were taking the first steps toward a different future. The Valorian refugees were granted citizenship on any world they chose. Most of them decided to stay on Earth. It had become their home. But now, they could visit the stars without fear. Ambassador Vasquez addressed the galaxy one final time. We hid because we feared what we might become if we showed our power. Today we reveal ourselves because we believe the galaxy is ready to become something greater. We choose to trust you. We hope you will prove us right. Across 10,000 worlds, beings looked up at the stars with new eyes. The cycle of destruction had been broken. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in millions of years. There was hope, and in the dark spaces between stars, the Guardians continued their vigil, watching, waiting, ready to protect those who could not protect themselves. 1 year later, a sensor buoy on the edge of the galaxy detected something emerging from the void between galaxies. Admiral Chen reviewed the data with grave eyes. The ancient beacon had warned of cycles, but it had also warned of something else. Something that came from beyond. Something that had ended civilizations before any of the current species had existed. He looked at the united fleet now patrolling the galaxy. Humans and Valorians and a dozen other species working together for the first time in history. They had revealed themselves just in time. Something else was coming, and this time, the galaxy would face it together.